This is the first tornado warning officially of Milton, just now issued for Marco Island, Florida. She sent me a radar image right there to make sure to mention that. So I do actually want to talk a little bit more about the storm itself, what we can expect from it, the impacts over in Tampa, and even over in Orlando. Let's bring in senior meteorologist Brooks Garner over at our Fox 35 Orlando station to talk much more about this. Thank you so much, Brooks. I know you have busy times ahead of you, so I appreciate you being here with us.
Good morning. Hey, it's my pleasure to help with any information that that folks watching may need. Yeah, we've got the first impact starting to roll in from the outermost part of the storm. The storm is now close enough where we can see the eye on Key West radar. So at this point in the game, we're just looking to time out the landfall and the location to determine where the worst weather will be as Milton comes into the region around midnight, Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, and then pushes right up I-4 before exiting the Atlantic coast for Thursday afternoon. A lot of impacts, Josh, rather, sorry. We're looking at really heavy rain across the Orlando area. And in doing so, we could have flooding that rivals Hurricane Ian from just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you, can you go over just kind of the latest stats here? Because, again, we've been mentioning Category 5 hurricane, the highest level on the Saffir-Simpson scale, but it doesn't appear that it's going to be a Category 5. It'll weaken a little bit. My question, of course, that doesn't necessarily matter at this point because we're still talking about a major hurricane regardless.
Yeah, and it's a very good question. And, if you've been following the social media on this, there have been the really compelling satellite images, the concentric rings. It's honestly pretty unsettling to see out there in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. As it comes in, though, it's going to transition from its current status at the top of the scale, Cat 5, to a Cat 3. That's still considered a major hurricane. Anything with winds over 111 miles per hour, to be exact, is considered a major hurricane. But it will be a weakening major hurricane. That said, it's still going to bring with it storm surge that could rival a Category 4 or Category 5 storm surge to the Gulf Coast. And it looks like with the current indications, we may see a landfall around Anna Maria Island, and that's near Bradenton. Unfortunately, beautiful area there, producing a huge storm surge of what could be up to 15 feet for Manatee County and down through Sarasota County, Florida. Of course, just north of that is Tampa Bay. And the thinking is that if the eye moves just south of Tampa, it actually may spare Tampa Bay of the worst surge. But if it moves just north, which is totally possible, it would absolutely bring out devastating storm surge there to Tampa. So as you said, it's a Cat 5 now. It will weaken, but it's still going to bring with it storm surge consistent of a much larger hurricane, even though the wind may not be quite as intense. At that point, though, it transitions from a huge wind and huge storm surge event to a huge rain event. Actually, the winds are going to calm down pretty rapidly as it moves inland to Florida. And after its 100-mile journey from Bradenton Beach to Orlando, it may only have wind gusts of 50, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. But the rain is going to be coming down at what could be over 4 inches per hour, starting just after midnight for the really intense rain early Thursday morning and continuing to what could be around lunchtime. That's going to cause some very significant flooding across inland central Florida.
And you kind of already touched on this, but there are still questions about exactly where the storm will make landfall along the Gulf Coast. A lot of people just pay attention to the cone of uncertainty, as we all call it, but you have to pay attention to more than that because the storm is so large and it does cover such a large area, right?
Well, that's just it. Yes, it's so easy to focus on just the cone and even more misleading, just the central line, thinking, okay, good. The center's going to miss me. It's going to be just south of me, 30 miles. But unfortunately, the storm is so big that if you're within 200 miles of the center, you're going to have severe impacts. You're probably going to lose power. There's going to be the flooding issues. And of course, on the coast, all the storm surge. This is such a big storm that while it'll make landfall either in Tampa Bay or down in the Bradenton area, we could see storm surge all the way south to Fort Myers. In fact, there have been mandatory evacuations in parts of the Fort Myers area anticipating that storm surge. There's such a huge fetch of wind coming in off of the Gulf of Mexico from that area. And in fact, it's such a big storm, we'll see some storm surge on the East Coast as well, on the Atlantic side of Florida, from the Jacksonville area all the way south through Brevard County, where Cape Canaveral is, where they launched the rockets. A storm surge between 2 and 5 feet. And so during times of high tide tomorrow, which is at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon on the East Coast, there could be coastal inundation. And this is an area hard hit by Hurricane Nicole just a couple of years ago that really did incredible damage to the beachfront homes there on Daytona Beach shores and Wilbur by the Sea. So there's concern that there will be more beach erosion from this as it exits on the East Coast side. So there's so many impacts. It's not just, it's so easy to have that tunnel vision of, okay, the now it's a Cat 5 and it's heading for Tampa and Bradenton, but the impacts are going to be so much more extensive. And even though it's weakening, it's still going to have major impacts. One of the driving forces for the weakening is that as it moves north, it's going to encounter a cold front. And it's a cold front that's actually going to bring really nice weather to Florida this weekend, which is good news because when power goes out for several days for a lot of communities, at least it won't be in the 90s. It won't be sweltering. We won't be dealing with heat exhaustion issues like oftentimes happens with early season hurricanes. We're only going to see highs in the upper 70s to around 80 with low humidity for the first expression of fall weather that Florida has seen this year. So that's the silver lining. But obviously, we have to get through all the bad stuff first. That said, the front is going to be the driving force to weaken the system and transform it from the concentric Category 5 you see on satellite there with like almost the perfect ring to almost a stretched out version horizontally, almost like a black hole can stretch out a star. And in doing so, it's going to compress all of that rain into one little band along and north of the track. So it basically takes all the rain, all the moisture from that huge hurricane right now and compresses it and lays it down. And that's why we're going to have so much flooding. And that's why it's such a concern. I wouldn't be surprised, unfortunately, if we get a significant amount of flooding into homes, especially just north of Orlando from roughly maybe Tampa Bay all the way up to Daytona Beach.
Yeah, and one thing that I did notice is the storm at one point, once it did become a Category 5 originally, it actually, and I don't want to get too technical, but it dipped below 900 millibars. That's fairly rare, right?
Mm-hmm. It is in the Atlantic Basin for sure. And I think it was the 4th strongest hurricane in the Atlantic Basin. It's happened before. You go back to Hurricane Camille, Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 for Gilbert. Camille, I think it was 1950. There was Hurricane Wilma back in 2005. That was a really big one. And this one rivals those. So it's a sign of just how hot the Gulf of Mexico water is and how conducive and how favorable the conditions were within the area of the Southwest Gulf when this reached its peak intensity on early on Tuesday. And in doing so, it had winds of 185 miles an hour. But I think it's really important to reiterate for folks in Florida preparing for this, that while it's still a Category 5 now, and while it was a really, really strong Category 5 about 36, 48 hours ago, when it gets to Florida, it's not going to be in its current form. It's going to be in a lesser form, still a form. And I don't want you to let your guard down. I mean, it's still going to cause all the storm surge. So if you're on the coast and you're in an evacuation zone, you really do need to evacuate from this one. I don't say that lightly, but it's not going to be a Category 5 at landfall, and it's going to be rapidly weakening, transitioning from a big wind and surge event to a big rain event. But yeah, just to reiterate on that front, I've got a good friend who lives over near Bradenton Beach, and he's on the water, and he at this point is trying to make the decision: is he going to evacuate? And that's going to be an area where he could have 15 feet of storm surge, and I'm just telling him, like, you got to get out, man. Like, you don't have to drive to Atlanta. You just have to go over the causeway and get inland 10 miles or less. And in that area, if it's about a 40-minute drive from Anna Maria into Bradenton. And about, like, say you're on Siesta Key Beach in the Sarasota area, about a 20-minute drive from Siesta Key Beach to University, Bee Ridge Road, all these little roads there in Sarasota County that are safe from the storm surge. The line here to remember, if you're on the fence, if you're watching right now, is that you've got to run from the water. You got to run from the storm surge and hide from the wind. The storm surge, it could be 15 feet. That's taller than a person. That's second story stuff. And a lot of those beach homes are ranch style homes. It's not survivable. So you've got to get away from the storm surge. That's going to be the life and limb first impact from this thing. And people who have ridden out Florida hurricanes and say, oh, I'm going to do it, I'm not evacuating. Unless you're sitting there in a condo tower, that's a real risk. The landfall will determine exactly how much surge you get. The jury's still out on if Pinellas County beaches will get the worst storm surge. It's possible this makes a landfall up by Tarpon Springs or up by Newport Richey, which is in Pasco County, just north of Pinellas County, one of those US 19 towns on the West Coast. Or it's possible it makes landfall in the Bradenton, Anna Maria area. The problem is we won't know exactly until probably inside of 6 hours of landfall. The case in point recently was just a week and a half ago with Hurricane Helene. If you remember, the cone had it hitting Tallahassee, Florida's state capital, as the first major hurricane in its over 200-year history. It's a city with beautiful trees, and the fear was that it was going to change the face of the city forever and cripple state politics for a couple of weeks as they recover. And at the last second, at the last moment, it wobbled to the east, missing Tallahassee by over 75 miles, completely sparing it of any winds over 65 miles per hour. And there was almost no damage. So the thing with tropical systems, and the reason we watch them so carefully hour by hour, and here we are in the middle of the night on East Coast time, sitting here heading toward the 4 a.m. hour, is that it does change so quickly. So we're here to watch it for you.
All right, Brooks Garner there, senior meteorologist over at Fox 35 Orlando. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. I know you have a busy few days ahead of you, and we'll be taking some of your coverage here coming up in just about 20 minutes.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And feel free to reach out to me on social media if you have any questions. If you're on the ground in Florida and you're trying to make a decision, we check in often, Facebook, Twitter, and we'll try and get back to you ASAP, because I know this is a matter of life and limb for a lot of folks, especially on the water right now in Manatee and Pinellas and Hillsborough counties.
It definitely is. Thank you again for taking the time to be here.
You bet. Thank you.